What culinary masterpiece could win a cooking competition in Arrowhead Stadium in 1998? Let's find out. So while visiting my local Goodwill, I found this book on the shelf for $2.99. John Madden's Ultimate Tailgating, a cookbook with 80 recipes. So John Madden is a lover of food, and you can tell because he has a very large grill full of meat products. He also is one of those people too that introduced the turducken to America, along with Paul Prudhomme. If you don't know what a turducken is a deboned chicken stuffed inside of a deboned duck, stuffed inside of a deboned turkey. So it's a lot of meat. But every year on Thanksgiving, John would have one on the air or have a turkey leg he would give out. So a lover of food and a collector of recipes. And so I was looking through this book and I came across a section called Mostly Mexican. Just gonna leave that alone. But in that section, right after Cincinnati style chili, which is 100% not Mexican, there's a recipe for award-winning chili. Now, John introduces it here, but John is an icon of American broadcasting, and I can't hold a candle to him. So I reached out to a friend of mine who has an amazing broadcast voice to give me a hand. So here he is.
I present to you the introductory paragraph for award-winning chili. Madden writes, "The reason this is called award-winning chili is that Todd and Nancy Walters won an intense chili cook-off at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City with this recipe. The competition was stiff, but this recipe stood out from the crowd. Part of the reason is, being a white chili, it's different. The other part is, it's very good." Back to you, Cecil.
Thank you, Seth. So today we are going to make award-winning chili here. It's a white chicken chili. I've never made a white chicken chili before. I looked at the recipe and I'm going to definitely have to change a few things. He's a little vague in places, but hey, let's get cooking.
So first I'm going to pressure cook some beans. I have some great northern beans and I'm making them in a pressure cooker to cook them. I mentioned at the end of this video that this part did not actually go well. The beans were overcooked, so I won't share the recipe I found. I would follow a different one and perhaps even just use canned beans. I don't think the difference in canned beans would be that great. And I also realize this is a hill a lot of people die on when it comes to chili, and if chili should have beans in it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm from the Midwest, and if you don't settle down, I will put corn and potatoes in here too. Do not push me on this. So I start by picking through the beans to see if there's any discolored ones, and then I rinse them. I fill a pot with water and an onion, a bay leaf, throw in some salt, and then I set them up to cook while I get the rest ready. Now, this recipe calls for chicken breast meat. So in the chicken tender part of the breast, there's this very inedible tendon that you need to remove. The best way to do this is to use a paper towel to hold it down to the cutting board and then run the back of your knife along it. And it's going to separate from the flesh, and then you just basically flip it over and remove that little bit on the other side. Now I'm cutting these chicken breasts in half. John here is going to tell us to simmer these, but I'm going to do a little more than is asked. I'm actually going to dry brine them first, and then I'm going to poach them so they're not super bland. If you cut them in half thickness-wise here, they poach in a shorter time. And that is a lot better than a very thick cut of meat languishing in water longer than it needs to. Now, I salt these with kosher salt. After cutting them, I'm going to leave them at room temperature, basically dry brining them for about 20 minutes, and they're going to get a little warmer, come up to room temperature before I put them in the pan. I'm dicing 2 onions and chopping up 4 cloves of garlic. I'm also grinding some cumin here. This is for 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. I really feel like this chili needs a little more, so you might want to add a little more. And I'm also doing half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Again, probably needs a little more. The recipe also calls for 2 4-ounce cans of mild green chilies. I open these up, get them ready to go, and I boil a kettle for some chicken stock. I'm using Better Than Bouillon chicken stock. It calls for 4 cups of chicken stock. Finally, I get my garnish of jalapeno peppers cut, nip off the ends, and then I roll the pepper with the knife to remove the pith and seeds. Now, once you practice this a few times, it makes peeling these peppers and cutting out the center so much easier. I'm also using gloves here so I don't accidentally rub my eye later and feel like I used pepper spray Visine. Invest in these gloves if you're going to do a lot of peppers. Totally worth it. The recipe calls for a whole 20 ounces of Monterey Jack cheese, which is an intense amount of cheese. There's only actually a pound in the chili, but they want you to add more as a garnish later. So I'm grating a bunch of cheese for this. So the cooking process is pretty easy. I'm going to get a couple of tablespoons of butter melted into my water for the chicken, and then I'm going to poach this, bringing the water to a boil, putting in the chicken, turning it down to a simmer, and covering it. Leave it for about 4 minutes. These aren't very thick breasts, so they cook very quickly. At about 4 minutes, I turn them over just to make sure if any pieces were exposed and didn't get cooked. I turn them over, let them cook for another couple minutes. And these are real easy to check. Just pick one up, cut it, see if there's any pink inside. There can be the tiniest, faintest bit of pink in there. That's fine. These are going to cook some more, but they won't shred properly unless they're fully cooked. So you do have to fully cook them first. After the chicken's cooked, I put it on a rack to cool while I'm going to sweat the onions. And then while the onions are sweating, I'm also going to shred the chicken. I sweat the onions in some oil, add some salt. Now, these are going to take a bit, and don't rush it. You don't want them brown. This is white chili after all. While they cook, I'm going to shred the chicken. I use 2 forks, but we found out in one of my other videos that a paddle mixer works just as well for this, and really, genuinely, you don't need big, long chunks here, so paddle mixer is going to be fine if you want to do that. I'll also add my beans to a bowl and then add the stock into that, so it's just easier to add both at the same time. Once the onion is translucent, I add the garlic, and I cook for about a minute until it's fragrant. I add the spices and cook for about another 30 seconds. Finally, I'll add the green chilies. Once this is mixed, I'll add in the stock with the beans, the chicken, and this intense amount of cheese. I don't like cooking cheese like this. Now, it comes to a simmer. You're going to want to simmer it and then stir it frequently for about 15 minutes, making sure it doesn't stick because there's cheese in it. It's probably going to stick to the bottom if you don't stir it, so be vigilant. All right, I plate this up with a little bit of cheese on top and some of the diced jalapeno pepper. Give it a little crunch. Let's take it over, see what it tastes like.
All right, let's give award-winning chili a try here. Well, it's definitely the whitest chili I've ever had. I'm being mean. It's not terrible, right? But I wouldn't consider it award-winning. And if it is award-winning at Arrowhead Stadium, take whatever you can if you're near there and go win that chili competition, because it seems pretty easy if this is the victor here. It's good potluck chili, but it's an average dish. I probably won't ever make this again. At least not like this. I might make a white chicken chili again, but I probably won't make it like this again. I think it doesn't have the cohesiveness that chili normally does. Chili is a thing that cooks for a while. It's got a lot of flavor. All those flavors meld together. And in this bowl, it's very one note. The beans are a little overcooked, and that's my fault, but I think like of anything, I think the beans probably taste the best in here. I think poaching chicken is fine if you're going to eat it right away, but then to cook it again for 15 minutes afterwards, you're already cooking chicken breast for a long time, and now you're cooking it again after it's done. So you're toughening up that chicken breast, and it's not as appetizing as I think possibly chicken thighs, or maybe cooking the chicken inside of the pot might actually taste better. So there's a lot of things I would change on this. Here's the thing. I made this, and I'm not going to make it again, but I don't think that's a failure. In fact, I'm going to learn from this experience. I may use this recipe as a jumping off point to make something better in the future. I may use this recipe to inform another recipe that I look at in the future to decide whether or not I'm going to do something and follow the recipe or change it based on what I did here today. I'm adding to my culinary toolbox with every single failure and every single success. So I don't think that this is a waste of time. I think this is great. Try new recipes, try new things out, and see if you like them. See if they fit your palate. See if they're good for you and your family. And if they're not, use the things you learned that day to make stuff that's better for your family and better for yourself. Maybe you're a person who really enjoys chili. Let me know what you think. Would you change something in this to make it taste differently? Just perusing a few recipes online, I saw that many people don't use Monterey Jack cheese. Instead, they use cream cheese in their white chicken chili. I might, like I said, change out for chicken thighs. I might use canned beans even in the future. I think that there's a lot of changes that could be made to this, so let me know what you think. I want to thank Seth Andrews of the Thinking Atheist podcast. I will link his show in the notes below. He's a great guy and puts on a great show. Check him out if you haven't already. Please like, share, subscribe. All it takes is one up thumb, one comment, one share to get my video in someone else's feed, and it helps the channel immensely. Come back next time. Until then, season liberally.